Zimbabwe's First Lady Grace Mugabe has been granted diplomatic immunity. The notice has been published in the Government Gazette. The International Relations Minister, Maite Nkoane-Mashabane, invoked Section 7.2 of the Diplomatic Immunity and Privileges Act. Now, this act states that immunity can only be granted if it is an interest of the Republic. Mugabe is wanted in South Africa on a charge of assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm. It stems from an altercation last week in a Johannesburg hotel. Mugabe allegedly assaulted local model Gabriella Angels with an extension cord. All right, Afriforums Wille Spies joins us in studio now to discuss the details surrounding Grace Mugabe going back to Zimbabwe. A very good afternoon to you, Wille. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
What do we know about the First Lady going back to Zimbabwe?
Well, the reports are that she has arrived in Harare already. Actually, the reports about her arrival in Harare actually came before the reports regarding the Government Gazette. So I think the timing of the whole issue was done in such a way to obstruct and to frustrate any possible efforts that there may have been to bring an urgent application to prevent her from leaving the country. So be that as it may, we now know that she is in Harare. We now know that the Department of International Relations did grant diplomatic immunity, and now the next step would be for whoever feel that that's not right, and we are in that part of that fight.
How does this affect Afriforum's case of assault against her then?
Yeah. Well, it's not Afriforum's case, just to put it firstly. It's a case of a private individual, Gabriella Angels. She was assaulted. She laid charges at the police. And the police was actually investigating the matter, and the investigation was it was properly done and ready probably to be handed over to the national prosecuting authorities when the immunity was granted. So the next step would have been for the national prosecuting authority to either prosecute or not, and if they did not prosecute, then Afriforum would have made available the services of Advocate Harry Nell to assist Ms. Angels with a private prosecution. Now that immunity is being granted, there's an extra hurdle being put in the way of Ms. Angels, and we will have to challenge the immunity. We will be doing so by taking the decision on review, and it will envisage a court application probably to the Pretoria High Court within the next week or two.
Okay, and you're actually questioning the validity of the diplomatic immunity. How can you be so sure? How can you confidently state that it is unlawful? Because the minister acted within the Diplomatic Immunities and Privileges Act and all the other laid down procedures and laws.
The Act does give the minister wide discretion, but there's an interesting qualification. It was actually read out in the news that the qualification is that it must be in the interest of the Republic. The question is it in the interest of the Republic that any person is being assaulted and walks away immune against prosecution? I do not think so. I think we have a constitution that actually protects individuals. We have a constitution that say everyone, regardless of where they stand, socially, politically, or otherwise, are equal, and that no one is above the law. And based on that, it is not in the interest of justice, and it's not in the interest of South Africa to treat the First Lady of a neighboring state in a different way than any other person would have been treated in similar circumstances. Okay. And we will challenge it on that basis.
Now, according to government lawyers that have been consulted about this subject, the nature of Mugabe's visit to South Africa actually disqualified her from diplomatic immunity, I beg your pardon. But the fact that she was here in South Africa for the SADC summit in the company of her husband, President Robert Mugabe, doesn't that afford her automatic qualification for diplomatic immunity?
You will, if you look at the Government Gazette notice, you will see it's dated today. It was published today, and the minister granted the immunity yesterday, and that is what allowed her to leave the country. But when this act was committed, there was no talk or no indication of diplomatic immunity. There was no indication of an official visit. The only indications are that she was here for a family fight, and she was here for medical reasons and for perhaps shopping in Sandton or whatever. But she was not here for the SADC summit when this happened last Sunday evening. The whole matter of the SADC summit that came in was actually an afterthought that was thought out by the Zimbabwean authorities in order to create a smoke screen for Mrs. Mugabe to leave the country.
And the past week, the Police Minister Fikile Mbalula gave varying accounts of why the First Lady had not been arrested. And, you know, he also gave assurances that all the necessary legal steps and action will definitely be taken. But it doesn't appear that this has happened already. Shouldn't you be rather attacking the Police Minister?
I think the Police Minister, well, he's part of a government. He's part of a government that's committed to the principles of cooperative government. One government department cannot go against the others. And it was published that the Police Minister or the Police Ministry actually stated that they got news that there was an application for immunity and that they held their actions in abeyance. I can understand that. That's understandable. The fact that immunity was granted, that was the fault that was made, and we will attack that fault.
Okay. And on Thursday, Afriforum said that a third party offered Engels some money to make the matter go away. Who is this person?
Well, it suffices to say that it was a representative of the Zimbabwean government, and he approached an intermediary party who is related or who is connected to Ms. Engels.
Who is it?
Well, I'm not in a position to mention a name.
Okay. Have you actually seen him making that offer?
No, I haven't seen him. I'm an attorney. I take instructions and I convey the instructions and I convey what my client tells me. And if needs be and if necessary, and if happens what needs to happen, and this matter goes to court and not to politicians to be dealt with.
The reason I'm asking is that is there some sort of proof that this offer has actually been made?
Well, I think it is possible to prove it, yes. And the first person to show it is Ms. Engels herself, who would be able to testify under oath. And that's why it's so important that this matter goes to court, so that the facts could be put on the table and an independent person could judge the facts rather than politicians.
All right, very great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, that was Afriforums Wille Spies, just giving us an update on the First Lady of Zimbabwe going back to Zimbabwe. All right, let's move